Hello guys, welcome back to literature classes. This is Abhilasha Yadav. Guys, today we are going to talk about the history of English literature's fifth part. That means Restoration Age. Before this video, I have talked about Old English period in the History of English Literature series. And after that, Age of Chaucer, Age of Revival, and also the Elizabethan Age and Puritan Age. Today we shall talk about Restoration Age. What happened in the Restoration Age regarding history, regarding literature of Restoration Age, and we shall also discuss about literary trends, means what were the important things like heroic drama or like literary trends, heroic drama, comedy of manners, and what were the important things that were happened in this age. And we shall also talk about some important poets, writers in this age which were very much famous. And we shall also talk about the writers' important works which we have to read. So, without wasting further time, we should move to the topic. So, Restoration Age. The Restoration Age was started in 1660. Restoration Age was started in 1660 and it was ended in 1700. Friends, the question comes that why this Restoration Age is called Restoration Age. This word restoration is made from restore. Restore means something has been restored in this age. So what was restored in this age? That there were two things that were restored. First thing was King Charles II was restored in the throne of England. And the next thing that was happened, that is called theatres. Theatres were reopened in the Restoration Age. That's why this age was called as Restoration Age. Charles II was the King of England in the Restoration Age, and he was restored in the year 1660, and with his restoration, theatres were reopened because he loves theatres. That's why theatres were reopened. So, the period from 1660 to 1700 is known as the Restoration Age, from the monarchy that was restored in England with the King Charles II, and the next thing was the reopening of English theatres which had been closed during Cromwell's Puritan regime. And the restoration of the Church of England as the national church. Clear? So, Charles II. Guys, let's talk about history. So, Charles II, who has Catholic sympathies, okay, and he wanted to make his son the King of England, and he did not have any legitimate child, any legitimate heir, but only a Catholic brother. He has only a Catholic brother named James. So, he wanted to make King of England. Whom he wanted to make? James. James was the Catholic brother of Charles II. Clear? But there were some people, there were some members who did not want that king will make his brother as the King of England. There were so many people who were against king. Okay, that was the main point. That's why there were two parties formed. There were two parties formed. There were two parties that were formed. First was Tory party and second was Whig party. So the Tory party, which was supporting to the royal prerogative. Royal prerogative means King Charles II. They were supporting King Charles II, means they wanted that king, whatever king will do, that will be the final decision. But Whigs were the people who were against the king's priorities. Means who do not want that king will make James II as the King of England. So they were challenging King Charles II. So after this differentiation, the result comes as the exclusion crisis. So what was the exclusion crisis and when it started? So this exclusion crisis started in 1679 and it ended in 1681. Clear? So the exclusion crisis, what is the meaning of this exclusion crisis and why this started? So this whole attempt to exclude James from the throne of England was called as the exclusion crisis. The attempt to exclude James II, who was the brother of Charles II, from the throne of England is called as the exclusion crisis. It was started in 1679 and ended in 1681. So, and this is exclusion crisis. After this ending of exclusion crisis, the result was that Charles II ended this crisis by dissolving the parliament. He dissolved the parliament and he crowned James II as the King of England finally in 1685. Clear? So James II crowned as the king in 1685. After this 1685, James II was ruling in England. James II was ruling in England and parliamentarians were against this king. They are not agree to make the king James II as the King of England. So they started a revolution. They started doing things against him, and they joined the hands with a king known as Dutch William III of Orange-Nassau. He joined hands with the Dutch king that is known as William III Orange-Nassau. He invaded in England. Parliamentarians supported that king, and with their support, he invaded in England with his fleet successfully. Clear? And when he invaded, James II fled to London. And William III of Orange-Nassau established as the King of England in 1688. And that attempt, that year 1688 is known as the Glorious Revolution. Why it is known as the Glorious Revolution? Because King William Orange of Nassau has established himself as the King of England successfully, and James II fled to London after this invasion. Clear? So, this was the history. This was the whole history of Restoration Age. Now, let's move on to the literature of the Restoration Age. What was happened in the literary things of the Restoration Age? So, the writers of Restoration Age drove out the moral earnestness and seriousness which had characterized the Puritan writers. Okay, and replaced it with the spirit of gaiety. There were so many things that were written, like comedies of Molière. They were very popular. The tragedies of Corneille and the satires of Racine. These were written in this age, and also the epistles of Boileau. Clear? And there were some things that were written, like pamphlet literature was very popular in the Restoration Age. Pamphlet literature that was very popular in this age, and the very most famous thing in literature of the Restoration Age was drama. Drama was the most popular genre of the Restoration Age, or we can say drama was the most popular genre of the Restoration period. Clear? So, two types of plays ruled the drama of the period. The first was heroic plays, which presented characters of almost superhuman stature and their predominant themes that were exalted ideals of love, honor and courage. And the second type of drama that was called as comedy of manners. What was the comedy of manners? Comedy of manners which satirized the ideals, mannerism and behavior of the upper class in the society. And what is the most important thing in this age? John Dryden. John Dryden was the best representative writer of the Restoration Age. Clear, guys? Don't forget this point. Who was called as the representative writer of the Restoration Age? So John Dryden. He was also the poet, dramatist. Okay, so he was the best representative writer of the Restoration Age. If this question is asked several times, that's why I am telling you. The most important things that were popular in this age. So heroic drama was popular. Next thing is John Dryden. John Dryden popularized this heroic drama, and he wrote a work, The Conquest of Granada. The Conquest of Granada. From this work, which was published in 1672, heroic drama was popularized. Next work was All for Love. Published in 1678, was written by John Dryden. Next literary trend was comedy of manners. As I told you, that comedy of manners satirized the ideals, mannerism and behavior of upper class in the society. What was the Restoration comedy of manners? Restoration comedy of manners satirized the ideals, mannerism, behavior of the upper class society. Okay, and who was very popular in this trend? William Congreve, William Wycherley. Next is George Etheridge and Ephra Bayne. These writers wrote comedy of manners. In this trend, these writers wrote their dramas. Clear? Next, tragedy. Tragedy was also very important in this age. Heroic plays. There are writers who wrote heroic plays. Guys, I told you that plays, dramas were very popular in this age because theatres were reopened. Puritans has closed the theatres and King Charles II reopened the theatres, English theatres. That's why there were so many dramas were written in different form. So tragedies were popular, heroic plays were popular, odes were written in this age, satires, the most important thing was satires were also written in this age. Then pamphlet literature was very popular in this age. There were so many pamphleteers who wrote pamphlets. Next thing, if we talk about literature of the Restoration age, so there were translations of classical works. There were translation of classical works, parodies were written. Parodies like The Rehearsal which was published in 1672, written by the Duke of Buckingham. The Duke of Buckingham wrote The Rehearsal which was published in 1672. Next, The Tragedy of Tragedies. The Tragedy of Tragedies, or the subtitle was Life and Death of Tom the Great, 1731. It was published in 1731. Next, Henry Fielding. Henry Fielding was also a writer who wrote in this trend. Next, the very important, the very eminent thing in this age was there were two diarists who wrote diaries. The name of diarists are John Llewellyn and Samuel Pepys. These were very important diarists. If the question is asked in the exam that the diarist's name, who were the important diarists in this age, or they will say as choose odd one. They will give you some other three and the fourth will be as diarist. Okay, so you have to pick out the correct one. So John Llewellyn and Samuel Pepys were the important diarists. Next, important writers. If we talk about the important writers of this age, of the Restoration age, so John Dryden, as I told you that he was the representative writer of the age. So John Dryden wrote so many works, so many important works in this age, like The Wild Gallant. I am talking about the important works of the Restoration age of John Dryden. Actually, John Dryden was a poet, playwright and also a critic. Okay, he was born in Northamptonshire in 1631. John Dryden wrote so many works and his first verse was an elegy upon the death of Lord Hastings. Okay. So, John Dryden was popular for his heroic stanzas, heroic dramas, and the important first work was The Wild Gallant, which was published in 1663. Clear? Next, his important work was The Conquest of Granada. The Conquest of Granada, which was published in 1672. The subtitle of this play was Almanzor and Almahide, published in 1669. The Conquest of Granada or Almanzor and Almahide. Clear? Next, the important work he wrote, All for Love or The World Well Lost, published in 1678. I am telling you the subtitles. Why? Because sometimes the question is asked as the subtitle of this play. So you can easily pick out the correct answer. So all for Love or The World Well Lost. Clear? Next, Extria Redux. Extria Redux was published in 1660. In this Astrea Redux, royalist panegyric written in heroic couplet. In which Dryden whom he welcomes? He welcomes the new regime of King Charles II. When King Charles II restored, he wrote in the honor of King Charles II, and he welcomes by writing this Astrea Redux. Clear? Next work is Annus Mirabilis. Next work is Annus Mirabilis. He wrote this work in 1667. Next is an essay of dramatic poesy. An essay of dramatic poesy was published in 1668, and this was a critical work. This was his first major critical work, and John Dryden is best known for a satirical work. Which was a satirical work? Absalom and Achitophel was his satirical work, which was published in 1681, and his another work, Mac Flacknu, it was published in 1682. These two works were his satirical work, were called as his satirical works, and both these works established his eminence as a verse satirist. Clear? As a verse satirist. Next, his important work, The Hind and the Panther. The Hind and the Panther was published in 1687. It was his allegorical poem. This allegorical poem was written in heroic couplets. Okay, this poem is written in heroic couplets after John Dryden's conversion to Catholicism. The most important thing is John Dryden wrote this work after his conversion to Catholicism in 1685. He was converted into Catholicism in 1685, and he adopts the framework of a beast fable, with Roman Catholics represented as Hind, Anglicans. Hind was represented as Anglicans, and Panthers were Quakers, as Hares, Presbyterians as wolves, and Independent as bears, Anabaptists as boar, and Freethinkers as apes. These were the representation he showed in the Hind and the Panther. If you will read this poem, you will understand these things, the representation, how he represented these things in the poem. Next, the important writer were Samuel Butler. Samuel Butler, the most important work was Hudibras, which was published in 1663. The most important work, and you should read this work because several times the question is asked from this Hudibras. Next important writer you have to read is John Bunyan. John Bunyan, the English writer and preacher. He was the English writer and preacher, and he was born in England. Clear? He wrote the very important work Pilgrim's Progress. Pilgrim's Progress is a very important work of John Bunyan. Let's talk about Pilgrim's Progress. Pilgrim's Progress is a work Pilgrim's Progress. The subtitle of this play is Pilgrim's Progress from this world to that which is to come. It was published in 1678. It was a Christian allegory. This work was a Christian allegory, and this work is regarded as the most significant work of religious theological fiction in English literature. This work was translated into 200 languages. Clear? So, in this Pilgrim's Progress, this was an allegorical work and he represented gods and so many supernatural elements in this poem, in this allegorical work. Clear? And this is called as religious allegory. Okay? Next, John Locke. John Locke was very important writer of the Restoration Age. He wrote a work, an essay concerning human understanding. An essay concerning human understanding was first published in 1689. Okay? In this essay, he presents a detailed systematic philosophy of mind and thought. It is structurally divided into 4 books. This essay was divided into 4 books: book 1, book 2, book 3 and book 4. And in all 4 books, he talks about mind and also about thought. He talks about the philosophy. Clear? So, these are the important writers you have to read. These were most important writers you have to read, and this work, an essay concerning human understanding, was very important. Is very important to read. So, these are all the things that were important in the Restoration Age I have talked about. So, these are all Restoration Age. I think that's it for today. If you have any questions or queries, you can put it in the comment section. I shall definitely answer your questions. That's it for today. I shall meet you very soon in the next video. Till then, keep studying, have fun with literature. Thank you.